It's a first-class ticket to London.
Oh, my God.
First class. I'm offering you an open seat in Formula One. The only place you could say for one day, if you win, you are the absolute best in the world.
Hey, Ruben. Ever seen a miracle?
Not yet.
Me neither. Good to see you, amigo.
All right, sweetie, here you go.
Thank you. Hey, let me ask you something. A close friend of yours made you an offer that was 100% positively too good to be true. What do?
Well, how much are we talking?
Not about the money.
So what is it about?
Welcome to Money Unplugged. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for being here. If you're new to the show, the premise is pretty straightforward. Everyone has a relationship with money. That's what these conversations are about. What money was like growing up, how it changes over time, how our feelings about money can change over time, or stay the same. Some of those things that happen to us when we're kids, they can stick with us for a long time, you know? Today on the show, I talk with Cullen Roche. He is the founder and chief investment officer of Discipline Funds, a financial planning firm based in California. Cullen is one of those people in the financial world that I'd heard of but never met. Like I would see something of his pop up on social media, and it happened enough times that on occasion I would ask someone that I trust, hey, do you know him at all? Like, what's the story with this guy? And I would typically hear two responses. The first was, I don't know him personally, but he seems like a smart guy. And the other response was, yes, I do know him. He's a good guy. He's also smart as hell. He has a new book out called Your Perfect Portfolio, the ultimate guide to using the world's most powerful investing strategies. And I figured, this seems like as good a time as any to get to know this guy. And I gotta say, it was a blast to talk with him. We had a few laughs talking about working in restaurants. And looking back on the conversation now, I realize it's possible that he and I might have actually crossed paths in real life, because the restaurant that he talks about in this conversation is one that I went to a few times. Anyway, let's get into it with Cullen Roche. You grew up here in Alexandria. How many siblings did you have?
Oh boy, there were 8 of us in the family, so big family. It was strange because I think a lot of what I've learned about money is sort of related to the way that my parents forced us to kind of work as a team when we were little. We shared everything. You never felt like you had true ownership of really anything, and my parents really emphasized that. And it was interesting too, because my parents were, I wouldn't say really well off, but my parents were, probably like upper middle class. They could afford to have 8 kids. At the same time, my father still works. So I think that the money was never certain. That's, that was something that I felt oftentimes. So we were, I think from a money perspective, I never knew whether we were wealthy or, kind of just middle class or whatever. I never felt uncomfortable, but we never ever got a sense that we were really wealthy, certainly. And that's, in large part a function of probably just how difficult it was to have 8 kids for my parents. And so it was weird growing up in such a big family where my parents were still together and our family was very tight. I'm great friends with all my siblings. And so it was I think a somewhat unusual upbringing, not just because of how big the family was, but also because of how tight we all were.
When you think about your early memories of money and you talk about your parents having you work as a team, you're one of the oldest of the 8. Do the early memories of money, is it, hey, as a group of kids, we're starting a lemonade stand? Is there teamwork that way? Or is it just sort of the basics of sharing and spending?
Yeah, both really. It was interesting because it's funny, it just turned out I'm the most entrepreneurial of the entire family. We're all relatively independent thinkers, but actually my 3 brothers are all attorneys. So they all kind of fell into, big firms, or one is works for more of a boutique firm that is much more entrepreneurial. But at the same time, it was interesting because when we were little, we did, little, like my oldest brother started a company called Barochko Brothers, which was a partnership with another group of brothers in the neighborhood with the last name Baruti, with the Roche family. And the Barochko company was like a lawn service company, basically. And this was a group of, 8 to 12-year-old boys who would go around and rake leaves for the most part and, do little things like that. But there was this sense of sort of, entrepreneurialism in the family that you had to, my father was a Marine and a DC cop. And so he was pretty tough with us and instilled like a real sense of individualism in us. But at the same time, there was a lot of loyalty built into the family unit. And so it was interesting growing up. I grew up getting this strong sense of individualism, but also we had a deep sense of taking care of other people at the same time. And so I've always been very paranoid about being able to take care of the people around me. And money has always sort of been an essential part of that, because money will not solve all the problems in your life by any means, but money will make it easier for you, especially to take care of other people. And so I've always had this strong sense of entrepreneurialism and this drive to obtain the ability to get money, because I always felt like that would make it easier for me to take care of the people around me. And that I directly derived, I think, from the way my family operated when we were younger.
I'm assuming that as entrepreneurial as Barochko Brothers was as an organization, there was not a formal LLC that was established. There were not W-2s handed out. So aside from your handiwork there,
this was a highly illegal business.
Highly illegal. What was the first job you had, maybe when you were a teenager?
Gosh, the very first job I guess I properly had was lifeguarding. I lifeguarded at my elementary school, and I lifeguarded with my brothers. So my brothers were, working at the same time with me all the time. We're commuting to work, working together. Again, kind of the teamwork thing. I would say my first really impactful job, not that lifeguarding wasn't impactful, but lifeguarding is not an especially difficult job. For the most part. I should be careful, because we pulled a kid out of a pool one day who was blue, and my oldest brother literally saved his life on the pool deck. But as probably the youngest of the lifeguards, I was probably the most worthless. So I I relied heavily on the older lifeguards to actually do the heavy lifting. But the most, I would say, impactful early job I had was waiting tables. I waited tables in college, went to Georgetown, and I worked at an Italian restaurant there on Wisconsin Avenue, an old place called Paparazzi, which was an awesome Italian restaurant. I would basically sit in the back and eat the breadsticks and the focaccia bread for half my shift. But I think that learning to serve other people in a job like that, in a job where you're very exposed to strangers and, but again, you're working in a team unit. You're working with other waiters under the supervision of a manager. And that was very, very formative for me, especially because it's waiting tables, especially back then. I think we were making, in DC, we were probably making like $1 an hour or something. And it was all tips. So you reap what you sow. And that was really sort of transformative for me, because it started to really build, I think, a sense of work ethic for me, first and foremost, but also a sense of really appreciating the ability to earn money in the sense of serving other people and then getting, compensation for how good is your service. Because there were times where I was really, really bad at that job.
One of the things I think that's amazing about waiting tables, along with what you were talking about, you're working in a team, you're dealing with complete strangers. You're hustling, you're learning all those skills. I also find that once you've waited tables, you pick up this skill that you didn't know existed, which is for the rest of your life, when you're eating at a restaurant, you understand where the problems are. You understand, do I have a bad wait person or are there problems in the kitchen? Once you've waited tables, you actually know what's going on behind the scenes at a restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a totally different appreciation too for how hard that job is. Like a lot of people, I think, walk into restaurants and they think, this person just, they write stuff down, they deliver it back to the kitchen, and then they carry your food out. And waiting tables can be, especially in certain environments, can be incredibly stressful, especially when you're working with, like if you have somebody who's very, very high demand. I mean, like I was funny because I worked in a restaurant where people would sometimes come in with very particular orders and stuff. They wanted very particular things on a pizza or whatever, or inside of a meal. And I'm this like Irish kid who grew up eating steak and mashed potatoes. Like I didn't even know what an avocado was until I was probably like 22 years old, truthfully. So when people would come in and be like, I want asparagus and, eggplant on my pizza, I'm like, I don't necessarily know the difference between these two things.
I don't think that's legal. I don't think we allow that here.
But yeah, so you develop an appreciation for especially service workers in especially high stress environments like that. I think personally, I think everybody should wait tables at some point in their life just to develop an appreciation for how hard is that job and really what is it like to be thrown into an environment where you're constantly interacting with strangers and being forced to work for other people in this very stressful job that I think a lot of people take for granted in a lot of ways.
What were you studying at Georgetown?
Well, I started studying marketing. I wanted to do something really creative, and I ended up majoring in finance because I had an influential uncle who, when I was trying to figure out what my major was going to be, he said, at one of my oldest brother's graduations, we're talking, and he said, we're talking about what my major is going to be, and he told me, he said, you have to do something finance related. It's where the money is, it's where the future is. And I took that to heart, I guess. And at the time, I think at that age, sort of a naive, almost sort of like, Wall Street, the movie type of mentality about money and finance. It was not necessarily the sort of like Catholic upbringing that I had come up in, where it was like, take care of everybody. It was at that point in my life, I probably more so believed that I needed to get money because I just needed to get as rich as I possibly could. And that was kind of the message my uncle was sending to me in some ways. I think he probably had it more of the mindset that, no, you need to make money so you can take care of your family and stuff. Don't go do some job that, you're not going to be able to earn an income in and take care of your family. But at the time, I think I kind of naively went into the industry more so thinking, I just need to get as rich as I can, and then all of my problems will be solved, which is totally not the way that my career ended up playing out.
So what were you doing right after college? I mean, a degree in finance can take you in a bunch of different directions. And I'm wondering, among other things, when you're at Georgetown, do you start to zero in on the parts of the finance industry that are the most interesting to you?
As a young, I think, more probably investing interested type of finance major, I was more geared towards, I wanted to be more of like a Warren Buffett type, probably. I wanted to pick stocks and manage portfolios, and that was kind of my dream. Turns out, so I graduated into the 2002 bear market. And
I was going to say, you're studying all of this at a very interesting time in investing history in the United States.
And I'm trading it too, which was really funny because I probably only had a few $100 or maybe $1,000 to my name at the time. And I incinerated the vast majority of this because I'm trading into one of the the most persistent and aggressive bear markets that we've seen in a really long time. That 2000 to 2000 and kind of late 2002 period was really nasty in retrospect. And I had just no idea what I was doing at the time. I thought I kind of had a grasp on what I was doing, but certainly had no appreciation for the type of environment that we were in. Maybe nobody understood fully grasped the type of environment that was, because it was pretty unusual. But I'm trading this market with, the hundreds of dollars I've made waiting tables and incinerating most of it. And that was one of the things I laugh at in retrospect was I never understood that when a stock goes down 75%, that stock can go down 75% more. And I learned that lesson multiple times watching myself buy things that would then go down 75% more when I think I'm buying a value stock because it's gone down so much. And I'm like, wait, this thing goes down another 75%. Like, that doesn't even seem to make mathematical sense.
Right. As a friend of mine says, once a stock drops, it can only drop another 100%. That's the good news. It can only drop 100% from where it is right now.
Right. So I graduate into this big bear market. I had decent grades, but I wasn't like my wife, who I met at school, was graduated summa cum laude, and she's getting, job offers from Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers at the time, and all the prestigious investment banks. And she's going to New York every weekend to interview, and I'm, basically getting rejected from every single, job application that I apply for at the same time, because those are the people I'm competing with. And so it was funny. I graduate and I sold life insurance basically for the first 12 months that I was out of school, because it was one of the only even finance related jobs that I could get. And again, a really interesting and formative experience, because I'm going into work every morning in basically what was a boiler room at that point. It was 50 guys who were under the age of 25. And we're on the phones every day, all day. And we're sitting there with the white pages in front of us. For people who don't know what the white pages are, it was a big white book of literally everyone's phone number in the area.
And address.
And all their personal information, which is actually kind of weird to think about now. But we were basically trying to make, my boss would say, you make 1,000 calls a week. If 100 people answer, if you can get 10 of them to talk to you for more than a minute, that's a huge success. And if you can get a meeting with one of them, that's a home run. And that's a person that maybe you can go meet with and then, close some business with. And again, that world is like the definition of like eat what you kill, where you were really busting your butt to get even 1 minute on the phone with somebody is a win at that point. And so I hated every minute of it. And also, I was probably for the people in the boiler room there, I was a little more analytical. I actually would study the products we were selling. And I'll never forget talking to one of my bosses one day where we're selling this variable annuity product, and I'm talking to him about it, and I say, the math doesn't actually add up inside of all this. And when you compare it to other options and things, like, are we telling people the truth about this? And he was like, what are you doing? Are you a variable annuity analyst?
Who told you to read? Who told you that you should actually read and study this product? Get back to the phones.
I didn't work at that job for very long because I just had, maybe it was the Catholic boy in me, or I don't know what it was, but I had a lot of trouble. I couldn't sell things I didn't actually believe in. And so I luckily was able to eventually move to Merrill Lynch. I had a coworker, actually one of my bosses at this insurance firm, ended up moving to Merrill, and I kind of followed him. He recruited me basically, and I followed him. And then I moved into a position where I'm then kind of doing what I wanted to be doing. I'm then building portfolios and doing more financial advisory work. It was still very old school back then, because in the early 2000s, even things like ETFs were not really prevalent. The iShares ETFs were just becoming much more prevalent. But these things were very, very new at the time. And so it was a strange old world where I was slinging stocks and bonds every day. We're getting research reports, and I'm getting on the phone again, like doing a little bit of the boiler room stuff where we're picking up the phone and saying, hey, our analyst downgraded Merck this morning. We got to sell it, so stuff like that, which was still not exactly what I wanted to be doing, but now much more aligned with something that I found more interesting and more meaningful, in the sense that now I'm actually doing much more financial planning work, financial advisory work, and something that's a little more comprehensive to help people.
If you want something a little more comprehensive to help with your investments, check out Ticker. With Ticker, you get access to the same kind of data the Wall Street pros use, but Ticker makes it simple enough for everyday investors like you and me. You just go to Ticker, type in the name of a public company, and boom, you will instantly see years of financials, insider trades, analyst forecasts, all in the same place, and you can try it for free when you go to ticker.com/unplugged. I've said it before, it is like having your own personal Bloomberg terminal, but you don't have to pay 30 grand a year for it. Ticker gives you an easy way to get investing ideas and learn from the best, because one more way you can use it is to track big name money managers and see what they're buying and selling. And I don't know if you've been paying much attention to the stock market recently, but there's been a lot of buying and selling going on. Save time, try it for free. Go to ticker.com/unplugged. That's TIKR.com/unplugged. It is the cleanest, easiest way to look deeper into any stock and see what the pros are doing. All right, let's get back to Cullen. You mentioned your wife, meeting her in college. How much did the two of you talk about money before you got married?
Not a lot. That's always been an interesting sort of thing to think back on, because I, as a financial advisor now, one of the things that I always tell people is you need to communicate with your spouse about money, because weirdly, especially I'm youngish for a financial advisor, and I weirdly get hired. One of the strangest things that's happened with my career is I get approached by much older men a lot who want me to manage their money for succession planning needs. So I get hired oftentimes by, it's typically, sadly, sort of sick elderly men who have they mostly have found me online, and they've read so much of my work that, or communicated with me that they feel like they really trust me, and they will hire me basically as I'm a succession planner. And it's always very strange, because almost 100% of the time this happens, the wife is completely in the dark. And I say wife because in every case that I've ever worked on, it has always been the wife for whatever reason. The older generations, it's usually the husband that manages with the finances in the family. And so I've always encountered these situations where I'm operating as this succession planner, and the wife is just completely in the dark about everything. And so now when I work with especially younger families, I always try to emphasize, I say, at least communicate about this stuff, at least talk about it, because one of the worst things that I ever experienced is that succession event, and having to then loop the wife in. And I try to, ease the succession before, anything happens. But even when I enter the picture, 9 times out of 10, it's still hard. And she's been so out of the picture for so long that she just doesn't understand. She doesn't understand what bonds are. It's even very simple things. And there's just a huge, catch-up curve to learn all this stuff. And so I always try to emphasize, get on the same page. And my wife is a rare bird, because she's she's very successful on her own, and she's very involved. She's very interested in money, and she's smart. She's always studied it. So I mean, gosh, she could easily, I mean, you can make an argument she's actually the smart finance expert in the family. So, she's very proficient with all this stuff on her own. So I don't think we've ever felt a great need to, we've always been on the same page, I guess, almost by virtue of our work. So we're a little bit different in that sense. But yeah, I think it's one of the things that I've grown really passionate about is, I don't know if you are familiar with Doug Bonaparte's work, but him and his wife just wrote a book called Money Together. And it is fabulous. It's a book about basically this whole topic of, get on the same page with your spouse, learn about your money together, grow it together, be a team. And I think that's a really great message.
I had Heather on the show a couple of months ago, and it was a phenomenal conversation. And you're right.
Awesome.
It's a great book. Let's go to the speed round. What is a thing that you have bought that makes you happy?
I bought I'm kind of I've become a health nut in the last sort of like 5 years, in part because of my kids. Once my kids were born, your kids do something messed up to you where they make you think about time a lot, and they make you think about your own health a lot. Because I think obsessively now about how badly I want to be around when my daughters are 20 and 30 and 40 years old for all their various life events. And I bought a sauna before. It was one of my bigger splurges of the last 10 years. And back then, a two-person sauna was only, I don't know, maybe a couple $1,000s. So it wasn't the craziest thing I've ever bought, but it is my absolute favorite thing. And in the, especially in the post-COVID period, a lot of research has come out that sauna is just amazing for you. It's an amazing way to have maintain an elevated but relatively low and healthy heart rate for a sustained period of time. So it's very good for you for numerous different reasons. But it's one of those things where also, I can go into a sauna and close the door and tell everybody, you don't bother me for 45 minutes. This is my peace and quiet time. So I don't get to go in there as much as I wish, but that thing, I've had it for 5 years, and it's definitely my special place.
Yeah, you're not bringing your iPhone into the sauna. That's right. It's an isolating place. What is a purchase that you've made at some point in your adult life that you regret, and sometimes you still think about it?
Oh boy, I live in San Diego, and I used to live down by the water, and I bought a small fishing boat. This is probably, 15 years ago. And that thing, I had the worst love-hate relationship with that thing you could ever imagine. I had a lot of fun. I used to go, offshore fishing with it a lot. Got pretty good at fishing. And but I was also just really bad with it. I would leave it in the water. I didn't take great care of it, which a lot of this is probably my fault. But when that thing started to fall apart, it was the biggest burden I could have ever imagined anything being. So the old saying is the best 2 days of a boat owner's life is when they buy it and when they sell it. And that is 100% true.
What is one thing about money that you wish you knew earlier?
I wish I understood how important it is to think of money across different time horizons. I think when we, especially as a practicing financial advisor, the industry does a really bad job of communicating time horizons to people about how you should think about money. And there's a lot of sort of vague concepts around this, especially around ideas like stocks for the long run. And if you watch financial TV or read the financial news, you really don't have any concept of how to apply time to the way you think about money. And as you get older and you get a little more sophisticated about this stuff, especially when you start to get to the point where you start thinking about, bad things like people dying and your own longevity and your own retirement and things like that, you start to realize that the time horizon of the money and understanding the way time relates to money is really, really important. And as an industry, we do, I think, a really bad job of talking about this and communicating it. And a lot of that is conflicts of interest that, people people are incentivized in the industry to make stocks appear like short-term instruments because they're it's to the industry's benefit for there to be more activity and whatnot. And I think a lot of that's just really poorly communicated, and people could benefit a lot from trying to have a better understanding of how time relates to money, especially.
What is the last thing you splurged on just for yourself, not for your wife or kids or anyone else, just you?
Again, this is embarrassing to admit, but I am on a virtual bike racing team. This is something that I got into during COVID, and I have a ridiculously fancy virtual bike setup now. That's kind of, and this is again kind of, I think fitness and this sort of stuff is kind of my happy place. It's where I go to sort of, get away and meditate to some degree. I can sit in a really painful long bike ride for hours and find myself almost in like a meditative state, which is, probably something weird for me personally. But yeah, I bought a fancy stationary bike basically that, has a really intricate sort of Bluetooth setup that I can set up, and, I run a bike racing team too. So we do these intricate races with other teams. It's actually very, very cool technology. And if you're a fitness freak, it's something that's really fun to get into. But it's good both for, my mental health and my physical health personally. So that's something that I actually, from a financial perspective, I think if that's something that you're really into, I kind of think you can't spend enough money on something like that.
Are there team jerseys?
Well, virtual.
Virtual. Okay. It's just, it's painting on the screen.
You can actually buy the team jersey in the team bike shop to get a physical jersey. I'm very paranoid about riding my bike outside now, in part because I will not be that guy who gets hit by a car with kids. I used to ride outside a lot. I used to do triathlons and stuff like that. And I would get the full, I would put on my, my tight little jersey and my tight spandex pants and get out there and ride around, like a dork. And, but I can't bring myself to do that anymore, in large part because my butt is too fat to not be embarrassed about wearing the spandex anymore. And also I have this paranoia about getting hit by a car that, with young kids, I don't do anything risky anymore. I'm a really boring person now with kids.
What is a charitable cause that you like to support?
Oh man, anything with kids. I will donate anything, any charity that is related to taking care of kids these days. And I can't say that I have a single one, but every year, I try to donate to multiple different ones. This time of year, it's anything that's sort of Santa's helper or things like that are sort of driven towards getting presents to underprivileged children or something like that. But that's probably a little biased because I'm so obsessed with my own kids at this age and my kids are at least by my measure, I would say they're spoiled. Yeah, that I'm trying to instill that in them too, that, hey, appreciate what you have because, the saying in our house is, and I think they brought this home, it's you get what you get and you don't throw a fit.
Do you have a favorite movie or TV series that has money as a central theme or plot?
It's really funny. I don't watch anything. Anything financial related sort of drives me crazy these days because a lot of it is, I think, so over dramatized that, it's weird. Wall Street is actually especially the way that I do it, the way that I think Wall Street should be done, the way that, financial advisory should be done, investing should be done, I think should be very boring. Like I always tell people that an honest news day in the financial networks would be, 300 million people went to work today in the United States and, they all kind of did the same thing they did yesterday. Not much happened. And, it was pretty boring overall. That's, back to you, Susie. Instead, it's like, oh, the S&P 500 went down 1% and, FedEx stock fell 10%. And it's all the over dramatized stuff. You cherry pick all the most dramatic stuff from the day. And really in the aggregate, not that much happened. And it was pretty boring. And, but that's a pretty bad way to make money in the media, is to say, hey, today was really boring and, you shouldn't pay attention to any of the stuff that we're talking about.
I was going to say, Comcast shareholders are thrilled that you're not the executive producer of CNBC's lineup.
Right.
The last thing is a penny for your thoughts. And this is just any bit of wisdom that you've picked up along the way in your life that you want to share with people who are listening. It doesn't have to be about money. It can be about anything.
I think that one of the biggest, most impactful things, I went to a Jesuit high school and our motto was men for others. It was an all boys school. And it's interesting, especially learning about money the older I get, that it is interesting that I think I've become a big believer in this, that the more you give, the more you get back from all of this. And I think that a lot of people go into, and I did this myself. I went into the financial services industry thinking, how much can I get out of this system? How much money can I make? And as I get older and, I build businesses and technologies and whatnot, I find myself wanting to give more, with the hope that in the long run, I will get something back. And I think that, it's something that I've also sort of understood just from learning macroeconomics and balance sheet accounting and things like that things even out, and that when, you run deficits, someone else runs a surplus. And that's a kind of nerdy way to communicate this. But I think it's very, very true that the bigger giving deficit you run over the course of your life, the more likely you are to earn surpluses in other ways back from other people. And I think that's a really good way to think about money, because this is not about how much you can just, extract from the system. It really is about what are you providing? What value are you providing? And if you get compensation in exchange, that's good for everybody in the long run. That's how good trade works. And it's how good financial services, it's how good money management should work. So think about it, think of money and even life, not from a position of how much can I extract from everybody else, but how much can I give to everybody else? And if you're doing something valuable, you'll get something back.
Friend of the show, Morgan Housel, said, I can count on one hand the number of people whose views on the economy and portfolio construction I pay attention to. Cullen Roche is one of them. His new book, Your Perfect Portfolio, is already an investing bestseller on Amazon, so check it out wherever you get your books. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.